What it do, cuckwads? It's your boy, the hater, up in this space, and we're going to do a little NXT rant. Not a review because, quite frankly, the show doesn't deserve the hater's attention. But the hater did watch it mostly, at least the highlights, you know. But there's a few things that stood out here. First of all, it looks like the illegitimate title run of Ethan Page is being legitimized, right? Granted, he wrestled that jobber Oro Mensah, which doesn't really say much, you know what I mean? Because anybody can beat Oro Mensah. Oro Mensah is just a jobber. But nevertheless, he beat him decisively, hit the ego's edge, which for better or for worse, is just an excellent finisher, right? It's the Hernandez border toss, which was just like a devastating move. You have to be like a really tall guy to do it, and Ethan Page fits that. Beyond this, Ethan Page isn't very exciting, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really see the point in this guy, but he's a big guy, so like, if they decide to give him a push, there's obviously worse people they can give a push to. Then they did a little vignette with Javon Evans, right? And he talks about how he met Matt Bloom when he was a kid, etc., etc. And long story short, this guy has no personality whatsoever. Now, granted, he is like 20, so, you know, we don't really expect much of him yet, right? Maybe he can, like, you know, improve significantly and become good. But, I mean, 20 is definitely young, but, like, Randy Orton, you know, he debuted when he was like 22, 23 maybe, right? And he was the world champion by 25. So I don't see this guy having the same career. I don't see him having the same career as Cucky Rhodes. You know, there's other younger guys that have started. Like, how old is Carmelo Hayes? You know what I mean? Like, let's Google that real fast. Watch him be like 30. You know what I'm saying? But the point is, this guy, I don't see anything there. He's definitely, like, good at what he does. I wrote Carmelo and accidentally clicked Carmelo Anthony, and for a second I didn't realize I was like 40 years old, you know what I'm saying? Carmelo Hayes is a whopping, he is 30. Fuck, alright, this guy's never gonna make it either, you know? So anyways, the point that I'm trying to make here is that this guy's young, so he does have a future, but he needs to improve, you know what I mean? Like, he has that awkwardness of a teenager or a young man in his 20s, and he needs to improve significantly unless he wants to be the next Evan Bourne, which is likely what he's gonna be. Nevertheless, another important thing that happened in NXT was Wes Lee turned his back on the Rascals, right? Even though they just reunified MSK and they went for the tag team titles, this is obviously going to go somewhere, so I'm hoping that both Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz get signed to WWE. Speaking of that, I guess we're doing like kind of like a whole review, right? When he super kicks Trey Miguel, Zachary Wentz just like, he has the worst reaction ever. He's like, what are you doing? That's supposed to be your brother. He wasn't even shocked at what happened. He was just shocked at the fact that this guy did it despite Trey Miguel being close to him. You know what I mean? Like, it was a little bit weird because, like, shock would have been more appropriate. But, like, Zachary Wentz, like, he got over the fact that this thing happened very quick and then moved on to why. You know? How about the what first? Anyways, this was pretty cool. Like, Wesley, he's been holding it down for a while. I don't know what this is going to lead to other than a feud with MSK. I mean, with the Rascals. But we'll see, right? Another TNA guy that's going to stick around, it looks like, is I Believe in Joe Hendry. Now, I got to give Joe Hendry the props that he deserves, right? This is a gimmick that could somehow, I can't believe I'm saying this, but that could translate to the main roster, right? You could see 20,000 people singing this shit theme song, right? Because Joe Hendry understands. He understands that it's not at all about wrestling anymore. It's not at all about having personality or charisma, because he doesn't have personality, right? His personality is he just likes to sing. But it's all about having a theme song now, you know? So he's following in the playbook of people like Fandango, Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Nakamura. These guys that really don't deserve anything, but, you know, because they have catchy theme songs, they get a push here and there, right? So, but the most important part of, in my opinion at least, of this episode of NXT, that's right, it's not the boring ass like women's North American title match. Nobody cares about that. There's only one thing here that really is worth discussing, and that's what we're going to be discussing right now, right? One of the matches was Pete Dunne, who is a very curious case, right? He's a very interesting wrestler because this guy is like, there's no consistency with him at all. There never has been. You know, he was the NXT UK champion, and then he became the NXT like star. Then everyone thought he was going to be a big deal. That he just didn't quite make it. Then he's in a group with Pat McAfee and Ridge Holland, and like, you know, a bunch of these missteps, right? Then he's Butch. Then he's Pete Dunne again with with Tyler Bate. They're a tag team. Then he's back on Raw attacking Sheamus. Now he's back on SmackDown. So like if it, the phrase "lost in the shuffle," there is no wrestler that it applies to more than Pete Dunne, aka Butch. So Butch is wrestling Trick Williams, right? Butch is in what can best be described as a mid-card feud with Sheamus. If that, like, I might even consider that to be an undercard feud because I don't see any of these guys beating Braun Breaker. You know, but I guess they could wrestle with him on a pay-per-view and lose. But none of these guys are like believable Intercontinental or mid-card champions at this point. I mean, Sheamus is, of course, but Sheamus could also be a main eventer at any given moment. So Sheamus is a different level. But he is in a feud with Sheamus, so I guess he has to be legitimized. So he has a competitive match with Trick Williams, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, at any moment now, Trick is going to hit the Trick knee, and all things will be restored to normal, right? I couldn't even fathom the possibility that Trick Williams would lose, right? But okay, the match is going. I'm like, all right, there's a chance now. The match has gone on for a while. There's a chance, considering that Pete Dunne is on the main roster, that Pete Dunne might eke one out, right? He might do a roll-up or something like that, right? But that's not what happens at all. What happens is Trick Williams goes for the trick shot in the corner. Pete Dunne just gets out of the way easily, and then he hits the bitter end on Trick Williams. Mind you, Pete Dunne is like 5'5", maybe, like at most he's 5'7". Like, I don't think he's 5'7", but at most he's 5'7". Trick Williams just towers over him at like 6'3", 6'4", you know? Trick Williams is a big motherfucker. So, you know, this was just silly. I mean, he was able to do the move, so kudos to him, right? As far as I'm concerned, if you can do your finishing move on someone, then you can, like, believably beat them, right? Now, you know, that obviously also depends on the finishing move. Like, the bitter end is like a move where, you know, Pete Dunne lifts the guy at least, right? So, you know, like Axiom's move, the golden ratio is just a drop kick. So, like, he can do that to, like, Omos, and Omos should just no sell it. But whatever, right? It is what it is. So, long story short, Trick Williams just loses clean. He gets pinned. And maybe this is the start of a Trick Williams, like, losing streak storyline. And then he's going to find his mojo again. But quite frankly, Trick Williams is the former world champion, right? And he doesn't deserve a rematch anymore against Ethan Page because he just lost to Pete Dunne, who, aside from the fact that he was the UK champion and he was the NXT tag team champion with Matt Riddle for a little bit, aside from that, this guy's accomplished nothing. He's been there for like, I mean, it must be almost 10 years now. Remember when Pete Dunne was like a young guy and people were like, oh my God, this guy's going to be the future of WWE because he's so young and so good. And like, he's done absolutely nothing since then. He's just been there, you know, collecting a paycheck. Good for him. But now he finally did something, and that is he beat Trick Williams. Now, I hate to say this, and when I say I hate to say this, I actually mean I love to say this because, quite frankly, I love being right, cuckolds. Let's really quickly look at Pete Dunne's, age. Pete Dunne. Hater on the road, Googling, shouldn't be doing this, 30 years old as well, right? So, whatever, it is what it is. So, like, how old was this guy when he started then? You know, let's see here. He debuted in 2007. What the fuck? When is it? When did he get the WWE, cuckolds? Like 2015, maybe? I don't know. Let's see. No, he was in Shikara. 2017. Okay, so he's been around for almost 8 years because, you know, the year's almost over. But still, you know, 7 years, he was 23. So he's done nothing for, you know, the beginning of his career. But Trick Williams, on the other hand, is another one that hasn't done anything because people think that, like, his title run, if you want to call it that, or his title win, might be better, like, was something special, right? Trick Williams also, all these guys are fucking 30, man. Like, they're not going to make it. So Trick Williams is 30, and he's losing to Pete Dunne, you know? So as far as I'm concerned, his push, just like I said, is over, right? Trick Williams is over. It's done, motherfucks. Now, I know some people are thinking it's just one loss. Yeah, that's true. It's just one loss, but it's the kind of loss that really hurts. I don't mean it's the kind of loss that really hurts just because it was against Pete Dunne or even that it was clean. It's just that it's clear what the prognosis is, right? It's clear that Pete Dunne, who doesn't need a win because a win doesn't help him at all, like, none of these guys are beating Ethan Page now is the point, right? So Trick Williams is automatically now relegated, as far as I'm concerned, to a non-main event guy. So with all that being said, I mean, I don't see what Trick Williams can do to make himself better, but you have to kind of go along with what's been happening, right? People, one thing that I'm seeing on my comments as well is that people are saying, well, Trick Williams had an incredible 12 months, so one loss shouldn't detract from him, right? which is a valid point overall, right? But it's not a valid point, all things considered. You want to know why? Because his 12 years that, you know, people are trying to like label as being a strong 12 months aren't a strong 12 months, right? Because think about it. How can it be a strong 12 months where everybody that he's beaten, you know, is a jobber? So he beat Carmelo Hayes. Yeah, he did. He beat Carmelo Hayes. Fair enough, right? But Carmelo Hayes is now an undercard jobber on a losing streak of his own. Then he beat Ilya Dragunov, who also beat him, by the way. And Ilya Dragunov is an afterthought on Raw. You know, he did pin on that one match Braun Breaker, but clearly, like, if we compare him to Braun Breaker, you know, let's go from that moment. Braun Breaker has obviously had the better career. Like, Braun Breaker really quickly, like, became a singles star. Then he became, like, you know, he was put in a tag team with Baron Corbin, which I didn't like it, but they won the tag team titles. And then he left for Raw in a very, you know, ceremonious way. Like, they had like a goodbye moment. What the fuck's this guy doing? There's a guy blocking my road. What's happening, fam? Jesus fucking Christ. So, anyways, I feel like every time the hater does hater on the road, there's some idiot driver on the way. But anyways, the point is, he hasn't achieved much in terms of like what he should have achieved. He should have been the WWE champion as far as I'm concerned by now, because Braun Breaker is the only guy there that has any capacity to be a star. But nevertheless, obviously his stock is rising, whereas Trick Williams' stock has been falling for the last few months. Like, he lost the title to a newcomer, right? And it's almost like when they brought Ethan Page, they're like, oh, okay, let's give it to him because he's just a better champion than Trick Williams, right? It's really that simple. They were like, oh, okay, enough of Trick Williams. We get it. He had his moment, but it's just that, right? That's one storyline, I guess, that you can kind of apply to many different wrestlers post-WrestleMania. You know what I mean? So we have, you know, Sami Zayn, Bayley, Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, Trick Williams, you know, a bunch of people that had like really strong closings, right? The season for them closed really, really powerfully, right? Bayley became the champion. Bianca and Jade Cargill became the tag team champions. And of course, Trick became the NXT champion in what was presented as like a big deal, right? And then he also, like, you know, in the months thereby, he also defeated Carmelo Hayes, which was like honestly the bigger match, right? They should have just had Carmelo Hayes beat Ilya Dragunov and then have this or something, right? To like give Trick Williams like that moment as a 2-1, but they didn't. So this was just so they could move Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes out of NXT, and they needed a guy to hold the belt because somebody needs to hold the belt, and they have nobody else, right? So as a result, what do? They said, oh shit, wow, we put ourselves in a situation where our champion is Trick Williams. Unacceptable. So what do? They went to TNA and they said, hey, give us some stars, you know? TNA gave them Joe Hendry, which is obviously going to be an NXT main eventer, and they gave them, the Rascals back, and a bunch of other things like of that nature, right? But more importantly, they signed Ethan Page, who is now the NXT champion, right? So in other words, they did all they could as quickly as they could to get the title off of Trick Williams because they have no faith in him. And, you know, as I've said many times before, they are justified in having no faith in Trick Williams because Trick Williams is fucking boring. You know what I mean? He's a big, strong-looking dude with a flying knee finisher. How about do a wrestling move? It's like this guy doesn't know how to wrestle yet, which is fine because he's relatively new. But it doesn't change the fact that he's like extremely boring in the ring. He can't cut a promo. And as we've established many times on this channel, the theme song, being over as a result of the theme song has its limits, right? And the limits are what they are. So with that being said, cucks, take care of yourselves and go fuck yourselves.